If you are here, probably you are planning your escape from the big city. But the change is never just about getting a bigger house or more garden space. You may want to buy into a completely different way of living. The story of this village is the Commuter's Balance, a place shaped by heavy industry centuries ago that now fights hard to protect its peaceful rural identity. But the real story of Boughton Monchelsea sits beneath your feet. The ground here is made from Kentish ragstone. Stone taken from local quarries was once transported to help build Westminster Abbey. So this is not just another Kent commuter village. Parts of British history were built from the landscape around it. And in many ways, that history still shapes the feeling of the village today, because now sits between two identities: a historic working village shaped by quarrying and farming, and a highly desirable countryside escape for people slowing life down. So what is everyday life actually like? The first thing many people notice is how separated the village feels from the surrounding countryside below. Coming in from the south, the landscape rises onto a ridge, giving parts of the village a quieter and slightly hidden feeling. Life here moves at a slower pace. You trade busy pavements and traffic noise for woodland walks, open countryside, and places like the Grade 1 listed Deer Park and the Buttercup Sanctuary for goats. And there is an interesting contrast to the landscape here. People moved for the peaceful countryside atmosphere, but many of the woods and open spaces were shaped by quarrying activity hundreds of years ago. What feels natural today was once part of a much tougher working landscape. Social life tends to revolve around familiar routines rather than constant activity. Nearby pubs like the Cock Inn become part of weekly life, and even the building itself carries history, with mathematical tiles once used to avoid historic brick taxes. Now, for the reality check. If you are considering Boughton Monchelsea, but you still need the connection to London, there is one major thing you need to accept straight away. Daily life here depends heavily on driving, with most commuters relying on stations like Maidstone West or Staplehurst to reach London services. And that changes the rhythm of your day. On paper, during peak times, the fastest journeys into London Bridge or St Pancras are usually around 50 to 60 minutes, depending on the route and timing. But the real journey includes driving, parking, and station traffic, especially during peak commuting hours. In reality, door-to-door journeys can easily stretch closer to 80 to 90 minutes. For hybrid workers travelling into London 2 or 3 days a week, that balance often works well. And honestly, whether that feels manageable or frustrating usually depends on how badly you want the countryside lifestyle in return. So what does your money actually buy when comparing a standard 3-bedroom house? The nearby Leeds village is typically up to 5 to 8% more expensive thanks to its stronger tourist appeal and postcard village reputation. Then there is Lewes, with its beautiful valley setting and historic paper mill heritage, where comparable homes are often up to 10 to 15% more expensive. And finally, Sutton Valence, which carries one of the strongest prestige reputations in this part of Kent. helped by its historic character and well-known private school, where similar homes can often cost up to 15 to 20% more. Here you get countryside character, larger homes and a genuine village atmosphere without reaching the price levels of Kent's more elite commuter locations. The trade-off is the extra travel. Property comparisons are indicative and based on a broad review of current listings, publicly available market data, and general local trends. Actual values will vary depending on property type, condition, exact location, and timing of sale. For families, moving here usually means adjusting to a much more rural way of life. The local primary school has a strong community feel and naturally becomes a social centre for many parents moving into the area. For older children, the wider Maidstone area gives access to the highly respected Kent grammar school system, and that becomes a major attraction. But rural family life also changes everyday routines. Teenagers are often more dependent on lifts, buses, and nearby towns because public transport and walkability are much more limited than in urban areas. Still, for a lot of people, that feels like a worthwhile trade for quieter surroundings, cleaner air, and more space. Admission is subject to the Kent test, oversubscription criteria, and annual catchment policies, which can change yearly. So who is Boughton Monchelsea really for? This is not the right place for someone who wants fast convenience, nightlife, or a train station within walking distance. Boughton Monchelsea feels like a village trying very hard not to lose what makes it different, as some people completely fall in love with that atmosphere. Others realise they preferred the idea of countryside life more than the reality of it. But if you are willing to accept the slower pace, the driving, and the extra planning that comes with rural living, Boughton Monchelsea offers something increasingly difficult to find. A countryside village that still feels authentic, and maybe that is the real attraction here, not escaping the big city entirely, just creating enough distance from it to finally feel life slowing down again. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video useful. Help me create more videos like this by hitting subscribe. If you'd like to check the videos featuring Leeds, Lewes or Sutton Valence, you can find them in the playlist below together with many other beautiful villages in the Kent area.